A soldier, an airman, and a Marine walk into a room. This show is the punchline. My name is Ryan Smeltz, and you're watching Veteran Talk Show.
Where do you want me to look, or does it not matter?
Just at me.
Okay.
It's just me and you. We're
Okay.
having a good time. I hit record, so we're recording, and then I'm going to have to mess with my Facebook, so I'll probably introduce you and then get a story rolling.
Right.
Hopefully something decent. Of course, Afghanistan. Anyways. All right, and we should be live. So welcome back once again to Veteran Talk Show. Cayce, I want to give you a shout out real quick because I appreciate you coming out here, man.
Yeah, man. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this. We're actually, Joe is a regular on the show. He couldn't be here today. So for people around tomorrow, I think we're going to be recording again. And as of right now, I have a tentative launch for the show, which I think right now we probably have like 15 or 20 episodes in queue. So I'm excited about that. But if you haven't seen the trailer for the first episode, it's on the website. Link in the description, veterantalkshow.com. And Cayce, not a lot of people know who you are. So
Yeah,
tell us a little bit about your background.
gladly. So, I joined the military, joined the Air Force in 2015. Did 4 years active duty as aircraft maintenance, so electrical engineering. Worked on F-16s for those 4 years in South Carolina. Deployed to Afghanistan once for 6 months, and now I'm at Seymour Johnson. Yeah, I know Air Force, and it's 6 months. I know you guys have like the year.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I chuckled a little bit, number one, because I had friends go to Afghanistan. I was in Iraq, and the MP motto is death before dismount. So we'll drive before we walk. Their MP line unit from Germany goes to Afghanistan. My buddy Justin gets back, and he's like, yeah, we walked everywhere. And I was like, nope. That's when I knew if somebody's like, hey, we're deploying to Afghanistan, I would be like, can I go to Iraq instead? And then, yes, you are correct, 6 months, but I deployed the 07-09 rotation. So I was still under Bush administration. 15-month deployment.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks. I know. And we were jealous of the reservists who had like the 3-month maximum. We relieved reservists when we got there, so those guys were like bright-eyed and everything, ready to leave. But yeah, as far as driving goes, we had this we actually had to fight for it to get this crappy clunker looking mule truck. And by the time we got it, we were like looking through all the records and stuff, and the records, whatever, it had a name in it. It was the Memphis Belle. And I don't know what it was, but somehow it said the Memphis Belle, the pride of South Dakota. And this crappy freaking truck just had a legacy from that point on.
So when you say truck, was it a Humvee or an F-150 or?
No, it was something that is usually used to tow around like the giant carts, the Dash 60s and stuff, to power aircraft for like just regular servicing and everything. So like nothing inside, no radio, nothing freaking. And we had to fight like 2 months trying to get our leadership to let us have it so that we wouldn't be like walking a mile to the DFAC and back every day.
Pretty please, our legs are tired.
Man, and then I was shocked how much it snowed over there too.
Really?
Like I mean, I didn't really research it much beforehand, and they gave us all the cold weather gear up front, so I was like, oh, I guess it does get cold in the desert at night, but I didn't expect to get like literally a foot of snow in Afghanistan. But we were like surrounded by mountains, and we were down in this valley, so I guess it makes sense. But yeah, it snowed like my 3rd month in, and it lasted for at least 2 months. So walking in that wasn't fun.
Sounds like Germany. It snowed so much over there. Of course, we were in Baumholder when I was there, so it was, up in the mountains, kind of.
Yeah.
Not like a mountain, but we were higher elevation than most of the rest of the country. But
yeah,
you would get 6 feet of snow easy.
Yeah, I was shocked. Like, definitely didn't expect it. And then we had one point where the Memphis Belle broke down. So they gave us this freaking nice F-250 with like heat, radio, everything. And it had 4-wheel drive, whatever. So we like took that for a spin a couple times and went like off-roading in the snow. Uh, but then once we got the Memphis Belle back, like 2 weeks later, we were just all depressed about it because we were like going from this nice Cadillac-esque freaking truck to back to this piece of crap.
So I guess my question is, where was the nice truck at the beginning of all this? Like,
it was owned by the motor pool, I think. So
okay.
like getting a rental vehicle while your car's at the dealership, pretty much. So they took her back once we got it. We tried keeping that, like we tried fighting to keep that, but we didn't win that battle.
We lost the keys.
Like, oh shoot.
I don't know where they went.
Oh man.
That's crazy, man. So you deployed to Afghanistan one time. So while you were active, I don't know a ton about the Air Force. Like where all were you stationed? Where did you get to go?
So I actually didn't go many places. I got stuck at Shaw down in South Carolina.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a going joke that once you're there, you just stay there. But I was pretty fortunate actually, because at that base you pretty much deploy at least every other year.
Yeah.
But I only ended up doing one, but it was like about 6 months after I got to base and was still learning my job. They were like, "Hey, you're going to Afghanistan." So yeah, I know. My supervisor pulled me aside. He was like, "Hey, yeah, so we don't really have other people that I'd want to send on this, and I know you're new, but I'm gonna send you." I'm like, "Oh, freaking!" And you've got like your different job training levels: 3 level, 5 level, 7 level. 3 level is like straight out of tech school, and that's what I was at that point. So I got my 5 level while I was in Afghanistan, which was pretty much pencil pushed at that point, because I mean, you have to have your 5 level to work alone, and what am I gonna? How helpful am I going to be with needing a buddy everywhere?
That's crazy, man. So 3 level, 5 level, 7 level. Like, I think the obvious question is what happened to 4 and 6.
I don't know. You know, military just makes up its own rules.
They're just
man.
Like, yo, that's how it goes.
Screw those even numbers. You don't need number 1 too. I mean, just gone.
And then they're like, you have to be this in order to do the job in a deployed environment. So, congratulations.
It's there.
Do you, when you guys get those, do you get like pay raises or any type of? Is that a rank advancement? It's literally just like
it's literally just your job qualification. So at least for maintenance, the 3 level was like you're just training probationary period. 5 level is when you can like work on your own and go out to the aircraft, do a job and sign it off in your name.
Yeah.
And then 7 level is when you can check over other people's work and sign it, certifying that it's good. There's also a 9 level, but that's for like the senior master sergeants that kind of irrelevant. You know, just to get a little star on top, feel special.
Nice. Everybody likes stars.
Yeah, man.
That's interesting because the Army basically does it by rank. So we do have different levels of maintenance. But I think everyone's favorite is operator level, which my mechanic friends would disagree with me on this, but it's basically an excuse for them to not have to do work.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like, everyone likes that.
Oh, I need help with X, Y, and Z. And they're like, well, that's operator level. Right there's the toolbox to get to work. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. Dude, one time at Fort Hood, I had been in by that point probably 8 years, I think. 7 or 8 years when I got there. And we were in the motor pool, doing motor pool Monday or something like that. And I was working with this one kid, and they were like, hey, we need you to do the grease points on the Humvee. I was like, what? They were like, yeah, we need you to do grease points on the Humvee right there. I was like, I have no idea what you're even saying right now. And they were like, well, it's operator level. I'm like, all right, I feel like if I've been in 7 or 8 years by this point, and I'm being condescended by a mechanic about this thing, then there's been a disconnect somewhere. So either the past 2 or 3 units that I've been in and my 15-month deployment to Iraq did not bring me up to speed on this thing, or you're full of shit. And I'm pretty sure he was not. I feel like after I looked into it, it was an operator level task. But I didn't know where any of the grease points were. And then the kid I was working with too, he had been in for a little bit. And we were just discovering grease points, number one. So we didn't know where all of them were. Yeah. You're not going to sit there and flip through the book. Like, you know what they look like, so just go find them. Yeah. And then to top things off, I think the first 2 or 3 we did, we were just yelling and cussing because the grease was like oozing out. Come to find out, they have caps on them.
Oh yeah.
So like half the people watching this right now are laughing, but it's like, come on, man. Like if you've never made a grilled cheese, it might be a little difficult the first time.
Yeah. We had to do the same thing with jets as far as like grease points. I didn't have to do that. That was like a crew chief thing. They kind of take care of the whole jet.
Operator level. Basically,
yeah, they do all the sucky stuff, but our grease guns had like this long hose, whatever. It was really skinny. So they would like sneak it in people's pockets or something and then squeeze it, put grease in your pocket. You'd like go to grab something. Man.
What was laundry day like?
It wasn't the best. But yeah.
Yo.
But I mean, maintenance, you had to watch it though. Like you not knowing about the job because they would pull crap like that, especially on new people where they'd be like, oh, go get an air sample from that jet exhaust and give you a bag and you'd have to like run behind it, whatever. Like no one takes an air sample. Or get brake lube or something.
I mean, in their defense, I'm pretty sure bags are the best for air samples. What else are you going to use? You can't use Tupperware, like it doesn't close fast.
You can try. I mean, I'm sure they sell something that's like way overpriced to the military for it. Yeah,
definitely. Like Boy Scouts, the left-handed pot holder.
Yep.
Oh, so we had stuff like that too. One of my favorites, which I feel like you should be familiar with, was Flightline.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Yeah. We had a box of grid squares. Chem-light batteries were fun until they actually came out with chem lights that took batteries. And then it's like, all right, my argument was always, no, that's a flashlight, but still worked.
Yep.
But so they still screw with you guys just like that in the Air Force.
Oh yeah, yeah. Maintenance is a lot different than the rest of the Air Force, which I don't think a lot of people understand until you get into it, especially Flightline. Because like my first active duty, I was pretty much back shop, which is really cush job as far as that's concerned, because you're doing like routine maintenance. But then when I transitioned to Seymour, then we were Flightline, which is like fixing jets when they go up to fly and then they come down broken or something. But like it's really high paced. People will be dicks to you if you screw something up because you don't want people to screw up, but it can be really stressful for a lot of people and you're pulling 12s like pretty constantly. So as far as like the whole idea of the Air Force is super cush, the maintenance side of the world is not really that, whereas a lot of the rest of the Air Force is.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's one of those things that's just kind of like overlooked, and maintainers will complain about it all the time, but leadership doesn't really, change how they treat them. Because I guess if it works, like if you still keep jets in the air, then what do you have a reason to fix it?
So it sounds like maintenance in the Air Force, at least that side of the house, is very, very comparable to how the Army is. At least in general, I mean, I feel like overall, and I mean, even my leadership style near the end there was very comparable to that hard press, you forgot your pen, so I'm going to rip you a new asshole. And it's just like, once you learn something a certain way, so like if I went back and did it now, I wouldn't be like that. Because I understand, I'm like, oh, okay, like I recently learned an acronym, DEARMAN, that helps with critical conversations and how each section, like the D is describe, and how it basically helps walking through conversations with people. And so now if I was talking to a subordinate, I understand how to address things, get the best result for everyone, and you don't necessarily have to be a dickhead about it. But
Yeah.
I'm also 34 now. So
I
it's
mean,
like,
yeah, everything in its due time. Now the Air Force tried sort of, but you know how they'll like come out with a course or a CBT or something and be like, "Oh, this will fix it," but then it just like falls to the wayside, and because they have like train the trainer, which is basically supposed to be that where it teaches you like how to train people, but I mean, a 2 hour class isn't going to override 4 years of being treated like crap when you're being
Yeah.
trained.
Yeah.
Like not helping people if they're stuck on a project, being like, suck it up because that's what I had to do, something like that. I'm like, yeah, you learn that way, but at the same time, that's going to push people out of their career field, which is why maintenance is always critically manned. Because it's like, why would I do this when I can literally work in finance and have a 9 to 5 job making the same amount as this guy that's working 12s constantly?
Yeah.
And having to wear gas masks for exercises and stuff. And then we would go in, like, we would have to go into finance every now and then, and they'd be like, oh, yeah, we close at 12 for lunch, and then we come back in like 2 hours. And we're like, man, I'm working the rest of the day. Like, this is all I have. And they say, oh, you need to come back another day. We're just like, different world, man.
That's crazy. It's funny because I'm pretty sure finance was very similar all over. I mean, of course, like at Fort Hood, because I think Fort Hood is like one of the largest Army bases in the United States, if not the largest. And so finance there was huge, and they had Army, they had civilians. You saw some Air Force working in there, but 12 o'clock, and they're like,
"Yep, done."
Nope.
Yep.
Friday, we went home for the day.
Yeah. Friday is leaving early and stuff, man.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
It's different. It's interesting because, you know, a lot of the Army, I feel like, because I mean, you still have certain jobs and MOSs where you work at a desk in the Army and it's like 9 to 5, 8 to 4, whatever, you know. But I feel like they're so few and far between that the kind of the bulk mentality is, I need to do the harder job with the longer hours so I can become that leader who's like, I have boots that have been in the military longer than you've been alive.
Yeah, basically. I'm like, oh. And I mean, having a clean uniform versus a dirty one, stuff like that, and getting chewed out for having a dirty uniform, and you're like, but sir, I work for a living. And like even in freaking Afghanistan, I got called out for my uniform. They were like, oh, I didn't know they made them that light a shade or something, because mine was just worn out from being outside all the time. And this was like a nurse or something, one of the nurse supervisors telling me that. So I'm like, man, we got different jobs. We're gonna look different, like grease stains all over the place, stuff like that. But
especially in the pockets.
Yeah, especially the pockets. They'll get you.
Yo, I can't imagine, like, just, I feel like that's something that the culture down at Fort Polk when I was there, I feel like that's something they would have done, put the grease gun in people's pockets.
Yeah.
And just empty it.
Man, I saw a dude, like, had a drill bit, had a drill, and he drilled a guy's nipple before, like, just walking. Yeah, it drew blood too. I was like, man, I don't think he was trying to draw blood, but it's one of those, like,
so he was just hitting the trigger.
Yeah, he went like, and it was just like a Phillips head or something. It wasn't like it was a drill bit. But the guy was like, oh God, and he took his hand away. He was like bleeding down his nipple. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, man, I'm just here to fix a jet. I didn't want to see that.
Turning the Air Force into a Saw movie.
Yeah, I'm like, shoot.
You need to calm down.
Here I am just trying to work. One of the other games is like some of the jobs, especially on the F-16, like your hands get tied up in it because it's such a small jet. So you'll like have your arms all contorted trying to reach in there, and you'll get like stuck up there basically until you finish the job and you can remove the part, like taking clamps off and all that. So people like take turns trying to fit as many things in your pockets as you wait, as your arms are tied up. So you'll like wind up having half a toolbox in your cargo pockets and stuff coming back.
Yeah. That sounds about right.
Yeah, keeps it interesting. Like, and sometimes you'll luck out and it'll end up being something you need. But I mean, that's rare.
Sweet.
Thanks, man.
That definitely sounds like the military in general, just pulling pranks on each other. So what, Casey? What type of aircraft did you work on most?
F-16.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to ride in one?
I didn't. Unfortunately, we didn't really do the oh shoot, what did they call them? Like courtesy flight. I can't remember. But we didn't really do those flights that much at my base. They like just started phasing them in once I was leaving there, and it was only like maybe one airman a month or so. It would be like the airman of the month would get to do a flight, but I mean it was pretty rare.
Nice.
Yeah.
I got lucky. I was
Oh man.
down at Fort Hood, and a guy I went through basic training with became a pilot.
Oh, nice.
A Black Hawk pilot. So I'm getting off
cool.
shift. It's like 8 o'clock in the morning. Just finished night shift. And he texts me and he's like, "Hey man, want to go up?"
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's not
Do
something
you
you don't say no to.
You
that.
don't say no to that.
Yeah. You're like,
So just to give everyone some perspective, you know, getting off shift at 8 o'clock in the morning, have to work again that night.
yeah,
That caused me to be awake for like 36 hours straight.
worth it.
Worth it.
Because now you get to be on a podcast talking about it.
Yeah. So I headed up there. He had to include me in, I think, the mission brief. He had to get like my social and stuff. I had to show up. I had to be in uniform with my dog tags and my ID card. And those were like the 3 requirements. And so by the time I got up there, and, you know, I think they were leaving at maybe like 1300 or something. So it was about lunch. It was maybe like 11. And I was like, "Did you eat lunch yet?" And he was like, "No." And I was like, "I'll grab pizza." So I swing by Joe's, like the best pizza place near Fort Hood. Actually, I think last time I was down there, they had shut down.
Oh
And I
man.
was really sad because that was some good pizza.
Dang.
But I grabbed a pizza and I went up there. So we ate pizza for lunch, and I got to see some of the back end. Like he has to get, you know, records and calculations and weather predictions, and it has to come from certain sources and be included in all this stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm just sitting there eating pizza, waiting to take off. And then we get in, and I strap in, and I think I used his phone to take like a bunch of pictures and stuff. But we literally fueled to take off, fly to College Station, to refuel, to take off, to fly back.
Yep.
And so I think he said it cost, I want to say he said it cost somewhere around like $15,000 or something like that to fuel.
Yep.
And so we spent $45,000 of taxpayer money for hours maintenance is what it was for. So while we were up there, you know, we went to like a steakhouse to eat or something while they refueled the bird. And then when we came back, it was really cool because he had him go out in the box, like the training area, and do some combat maneuvers.
Oh, that's cool.
So it was sweet because like at one point I'm sitting in the Black Hawk, and if I looked straight ahead, I was looking at the ground.
Oh yeah.
Because I was like, oh, this is,
Yeah.
it was pretty badass.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about helicopters. But yeah, that was one thing that shocked me too. Like our base did the same thing where they'd do a lot of touch and goes just to generate more sorties. But a lot of it just comes down to pilots' flying hours and everything. So they're just constantly flying. And I'm like, you can look at the fuel too, but also how much maintenance goes into like actually getting it ready to fly and all of that, and making sure that they're constantly fixed, and how much stuff you break just flying them for nothing. But
Right.
I mean, that just always baffled me.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Like,
Because when we got out there, like the crew chief or the, you know, whatever, they were all up in that bird.
yeah.
They had a checklist like 10 pages long.
Yeah.
You got to tug on everything. You got to touch everything. And I'm like, and another time he had given me a tour of the Black Hawk and took me up on top and removed this panel and showed me that. And I mean, when you think about it, to fly it, you got to know about it. And
Yeah.
he knows everything about it. And we get down and he points at this box inside the control panel. And he's like, "You know what that is?" And I was like, "No." He was like, "This is like a $10,000 piece of equipment." I was like, "Well, that makes sense because this is a helicopter."
Yeah.
You know?
Everything's expensive.
So he's like, It's a clock.
Yep.
It's like you couldn't just wear a watch or something. Like, no.
No, man.
And it looked old. I don't even know.
Man, they all look old in there. Like,
Right?
I was shocked about that too. Like our jets were from the 70s, but you just keep adding these revisions and like updating all of the avionics. Because I mean, aircraft like air-to-air combat is really based on all your avionics at this point. Because you're not doing dogfights like you did back in the day, where you're having to like mow people down. You're taking people out before you even see them, or they see you, and that comes down to like your radars and your weapon systems. So really, the 1970s aircraft is just transporting this 2019 2020 weaponry, and that's all it needs to do. But I got to fix a drone, like one of the little drone command centers too. We had those on base.
Nice.
And I forget where they flew out of. Like they flew all around the world, but the system itself ran on a server that was like freaking the size of a bookshelf. And they said it was something around like 600 megabytes as far as how much memory was in it, because the system it looked like your old like Windows XP freaking giant white desktop computer, like old as mess, not what you would expect to see a drone operator flying.
Yeah.
But I'm like that. They just keep using the same thing. It had like the green DOS system where it was like the green command line and everything. Yeah, I'm like, I was freaking shocked. Like, this is what flies the $60 million drones all over the world. Like, man, I can do that in my basement.
So it's almost like they get this chassis or whatever, you know, in the 70s or whenever they come out with it, and then they're just like, well, it still works.
Yeah.
Just take the old one out, put the new one in.
Yeah, just keep up. I mean, it's smart financially if it works, but I mean, I just did not expect it. Like,
that's crazy.
When you hear about how the military spends however many thousands it was for that on-flight freaking coffee maker, like $2,000 for a flight coffee maker, and then you see this old drone system piloting this $1 million piece of equipment. I'm like, why are you spending that much on that, but this little on this? But gets the job done, I guess.
Coffee's important.
That runs us.
I know, right? So, Cayce, I know you said you were active for 4 years. So you just recently got finished with active duty.
Yeah, last year.
Okay.
This was my first, like, what was it? I feel like it was December was my year point where I've been like out for a year as far as not active. I was still reserves and I'm IRR status now, but that was like my actually civilian home time, which has been interesting. Like, man, that came with some struggles though, like adapting when I first got out.
Yeah.
Because I had a job lined up that I would have been like building jet engines for one of the large manufacturers, but the 737 MAX went down, and my job was to manufacture those engines that would be fulfilling those new order requests. So that fell through like a month before I was getting out.
Wow.
So my like possible 6-figure career that I had lined up, thought everything was like set to go. I did everything responsibly, and I was choosing to get out. Like I wasn't getting kicked out, nothing along those lines. Like I had planned for this, and then that just got pulled out from under me. And I'm like, well, shoot, now I have to find a new job so that I can get a home loan, all of that stuff. Because I didn't know what the VA loan was either. I thought they gave you the money for a house. Yeah. I didn't know you have to like get a separate lender to approve you, and then the VA basically co-signs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still a great benefit, but I had no idea. So I was actually homeless for like a month or two.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, I had a little bit of savings, so I was able to live in a hotel, fortunately. But it was one of those things where like I got out, planned everything, had a college degree leaving, like a bachelor's degree leaving the military. And essentially did everything right, but things still go wrong. And that's not really something that people talk about too much. Like when you're talking about separating from the military, you get a lot of, oh, you'll hate it, just stay in.
Yeah.
You'll be losing your benefits. You won't find another job. Stuff like that. Try to, crabs in a bucket. But it really just comes down to how much you want to fight for it once you get out. And I mean, there's resources out there to get it done, but if you don't have the knowledge about those resources, then what good are they to you? It's like your education benefits while you're in the military. Like if you don't know about them, you can't use them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was an experience.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah, I got a short-term job working installing dish satellites for a little bit there until I got the position I'm in now, which I love, which works with people with disabilities, including veterans. So I'm like able to sort of give back to that community,
Nice.
at least where I'm able to. And as far as my benefits go, like I have the same leave benefits as when I was in the military.
Nice.
And I've got like sustainable salary, everything like that. So I think moral of my story was, even if you get out and you're literally getting kicked in the balls constantly, thinking like, what did I do? Why am I here? Kind of situation. Like, you're not going to be there forever as long as you don't give in that mindset.
Yeah. That's crazy, man. Like everything you just said, Cayce, about like getting out, doing everything right. I feel like if you hadn't put all that context in there and you were like, yeah, I did X, Y, and Z, and then I was homeless for a month, I would have been like, oh, okay, because he got kicked out for drugs, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like because you talk about all these people, you think about all these people. I've got friends that, maybe wrong time, wrong place, whatever the case was. Investigation goes forward. Next thing you know, they're getting chaptered.
Yep.
Or like the Army's like, don't smoke weed. And then they join and they're like, oh, okay, they meant not all the time. And now they're getting kicked out because especially like when I enlisted in 2005, we had a kid piss hot right when he got to Fort Polk.
Oh, man.
And they gave him a huge Article 15, a lot of extra duty, but he got to stay in. And he got to go to Iraq with us. Because we don't care that you pissed hot.
Yeah.
You're gonna be part of our numbers, and you're not gonna do that shit again.
Yeah.
But when I got to Fort Hood, if you pissed hot, it was like, hey, we had a good run, but you should probably head to the house.
Good luck, buddy.
And now these kids who have been in the military for maybe a year, maybe 2 years, they have no plan. They have no savings. They expected, they signed a 5-year contract.
Yep.
They expected to be there for 5 years. Now they're going home, and it's like, I got a buddy that went home, and he was lucky enough to be able to stay with his parents when he got back there. And don't get me wrong, like I don't condone drug use in any way, but if somebody makes a mistake, then it kind of brings it to an abrupt halt, where they had this one plan in their mind. So that's why it's just crazy to think about that, checking all the boxes and then getting out, and it's like you had all this lined up, and it was outside of your control.
Yeah,
that's insane.
I mean, expect the unexpected, plan for everything, whatever, but in the end there's only so much you can do. And as far as like the drug stuff goes, it comes down a lot to like your command too, as far as how much they want to go up to bat for you and fight for you. But when you look at career fields like security forces, MP, maintenance, that are high stress, high pace, like that basically push people to need vices. And you like, if you need mental help or anything along those lines, like there's a stigma around that in the military, where if you go for it, you get kicked out. I'm like, so if I can't go to mental health, so I try to substitute that with drug use, I get kicked out for that, when I could have been like, you could have let me fix myself and then been a like powerful member in the military who can educate other people on how to get through what I did. Because I knew a lot of people that just were deadly afraid of going to mental health, because like if they have a family, getting kicked out compounds all of the negative side effects, because you're not just staying in for you. And if you can't get those positive resources to like get you on the right track, then leads you down a dark road. Yeah,
it's interesting because I was very grateful while I was at Fort Hood. I had a conversation with a kid who I can't remember what happened exactly, but basically, I think it comes down to it. He had voiced that he was thinking about killing himself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to take control of that situation. I was able to offer him some guidance, get my chain of command involved, do what we needed to do, but not just the stigma that you just talked about associated with it and seeking help, but also the fact that there were certain policies and procedures in place that once we took him to the hospital to see someone, basically forced him into a position where he was, admitted to the 6th floor or whatever.
Yeah.
And like that's where he lived now. And I mean, I guess not really having been in that situation myself, having to be admitted for mental health issues, I'm not 100%, but I just feel like this, removing someone from their support system, like especially if a soldier at Fort Hood lived in the barracks, then all their friends, their second family are right there. So if I have a problem, I walk out my door, I go to my buddy's room, and I'm like, what's up, man? You want to get a beer? You want to play video games? Whatever you want to do. And then putting them in this whole new place with a bunch of people they don't know, I just feel like it kind of, didn't necessarily help the way they intended. Lucky for me in that specific situation. Lucky for him. I'm glad that the help seemed to work.
Yeah.
At least to a certain extent. He eventually came back to the unit, picked up. It was a very different role that he played after that.
Mm-hmm.
I think what they were looking at and part of the conversations that were held was possibly like a reclass. So instead of him being an MP, he was going to go do something else. But
yeah,
I mean, I agree with you. I think more ready help in a better, better prepared chain of command.
Yeah,
can offer a lot more support. But it's crazy, man.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's really something that just should be expected. Like, I don't know many squadrons that haven't dealt with mental health as an issue in the military. So, I mean, that we plan for everything. Why can't we plan for, someone thinking about committing suicide? Like, that's great that they were willing to put in the time and resources to retrain him and everything instead of just kicking him to the curb and being like, oh, he's not our problem anymore. And then he'll file for like VA disability for suicidal thoughts. And I think that's automatically like 70% or something. But again, that's just money. Like that's money isn't livelihood. And if you don't have a proper livelihood in order to actually like responsibly spend it, then you just put yourself in a hole. And because the military like washes their hands of you, then what are they to do? So, I mean, that's great. You were able to take him and they actually did what they were supposed to and were able to rehabilitate him. But yeah, I agree. Like taking someone out of their support structure and then giving them all of these resources and stuff, which are necessary, but at the same time, it's not realistic because they're not in their everyday life. So everything that they learn is an isolated instance because they're going to end up going back to where they were before. But you're training them how to be ready for that in an isolated incident. So whether or not that translates is kind of like a just toss up at that point.
A little bit of a gamble.
Yeah.
I feel like you had mentioned it before when you talked about training leadership on basically how to approach subordinates and how to hold those critical conversations. And, they would come up with a slideshow that you watch for 2 hours and now you're a master trainer at it, I feel like that's a lot of, we used to call them good idea fairies. So high-ranking officer, like this is a good plan. Maybe they're one of the ones that works at the Pentagon, like they're the head of that department, and they're like, yeah, we'll do a slideshow. It's gonna be
fix it.
Red, white, and blue. It'll be 800 slides long. Perfect. This is a great idea. They put it together. They get it approved, of course. And then ground level, we're talking about like practical application. So it's like, all right, if somebody says they want to kill themselves, then we got to follow X, Y, and Z. We write it into the policy, and it's like, all right, if they say this and they don't have a plan, then we put them on buddy watch. If they do have a plan, we take them to the hospital. And then they start that
Yeah.
That flow chart.
Yeah.
It's like, if yes, if no, then go to the next step. And on paper, when you go to the boardroom with all the brass and put it up on the screen, they're like,
that's scary.
Yeah, you definitely aced that PowerPoint class in college, Lieutenant. This is phenomenal. And then you get it down to the soldiers, to the airmen, and you put it into practice, and it's like, all right, well, this sounded like a good idea, but it's like,
what am I going to do with
really
that?
work? Yeah, does it really work? I think at this point I'm going to bring up, I told you before that we have the resources page on the website. And so what's interesting about your story and what we're talking about right now is Richard Kaufman is the comeback coach. And so I linked him on the website. I talked to him. And so he offers, that's what I love about it. He offers a lot of that type of support to active duty reserve veterans. So if anyone is dealing with possible addiction or recovery issues, they can seek him out. He wrote a book, which is pretty cool. I'm going to link that on the website too. But he actually, because I got to be on his podcast a while ago, and then I've been friends with him via the internet for a year or two now. Nice. And he went through homelessness, drug addiction, all kinds of stuff. I think mostly post-military, if I remember correctly, but I mean, he was in a little while ago, but he's been sober for like 30 years now.
Awesome.
And so I think he has a lot to offer. And that's the type of shit I love to see, a veteran offering to help other veterans, where it's like, because he is the comeback coach, because he owns the brand and the business and everything, he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
So he's not restricted by the red tape and the politics involved in it.
Yeah. Which, when you get to bigger nonprofits, that can be a big thing, where they lose sight of the actual mission, and then you're just filling out more paperwork.
Yeah.
Like for me, I hadn't heard of him or anything at that point. I really hadn't heard of any helpful like organizations to, help me with homelessness and stuff prior to going through it, which I think is another thing.
Yeah.
Like letting people know about these things prior to them actually needing it is a big part of it as well. Like, be able to prepare, even if you don't think it'll happen to you, you don't know what'll happen. Like if you get medically discharged or something. Like when I was going through what I was going through, all I could think is, man, I can't imagine if I had like lost a leg and I was going through this right now and having to deal with VA red tape and all of this stuff. I'm like, I'm a healthy guy. I've got, options and everything, and I'm not having to stress over this lifestyle change. Yeah. But I'm still going through this, and this is the exact same thing someone would go through if they were, dealing with that. But I did deal with Hire Our Heroes as well. They were really helpful, and I recommend them. They're just for job placement.
You called it what now?
Hire Our Heroes.
Hire Our Heroes.
Yeah, so it's like a national organization, but it was I didn't have to fill out a ton of paperwork. I instantly got a individual that helped me. And they put you in link with other like veterans that volunteer to help mentor people, and they might work in an industry that you're trying to get into. Yeah. So for me, I got put in touch with an individual that worked in an industry that I was interested in, and they like give you practice interview questions and prep you for that.
Nice.
Which is like really helpful. It's better than what the military gives you in preparation for leaving, because it's tailored specifically for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing. Like you were saying, he has the ability to do what he wants when he wants, and that it really comes down to individual treatment, because no veteran's the same. Even though you're dealing with similar issues, there's still going to be different ways to treat those problems.
Yeah. I think that's super important. I went through something, so when I got out, they call it SFL-TAP, Soldier for Life Transition Assistance Program.
Yeah.
And I want to say they had 3 routes to take. Now get this, because going into the military, so I graduated high school when I was 17. So I might have been able to go into the military, but I didn't, because I was just doing what my older sister did, go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found out that they wanted me to pay for it. And I was like,
Oh,
holy shit.
No.
So I'm like working my ass off all summer to have no money at the beginning of the semester. Textbooks, car breaks down, I have to get rides. I'm riding my bicycle at like 17, maybe I just turned 18 years old, to my job that I only got because it was close enough to the house that I could ride a bike.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I have no money. I hate school. I'm always finding shortcuts. The first semester I took like a college level trigonometry class because I was moving up in math while I was in high school. So I was like, I'll just do whatever the next one is. It's college level trig. In that class, I met this guy who convinced me to take not just all the same classes with him the next semester, but also a basic level math course. So I could basically sleep through that class. And I was like, I really didn't like that because I was like, no, after college level trig, I'm supposed to take this class, like the next level. But in the middle of it, I was like, this is actually a really good idea because I don't have to pay attention at all. And I get done and I'm like, I still have no money. So finally, of course, brother-in-law at the time dating my sister comes back on convalescent leave. Drill sergeant didn't know that convalescent leave was more like rest and relaxation. So sent him home with a uniform or two. So he's at the recruiter station in uniform, like helping out. I don't really know what he was doing, but he called me up and he was like, come on down and visit. I came down. The recruiter I talked to was actually an MP. So it's not every time I tell this story, I just imagine my mom like wanting to rip his head off for her son, but it's not really how it went down because when I was like 15 or 16, I think I had a Marine recruiter come to the house and like break it all down. Like this is what you're looking at and stuff.
Commitment.
And then I also feel like another reason I ended up in the Army was because I walked into the recruiter's office at one point and the Marines were closed, so I just went to the left.
That's surprising.
And that's what. But it was him too. It was Chris. He was in the Army. He was in training, and so I went down to visit him. But basically, the point I'm getting at, to bring it full circle, like back to the SFL-TAP, is you're getting out. I already had that college experience, so there's 3 tracks. You can go to college, you can get a job, or you can go into the trades, which was like apprenticeship, so you still get your GI Bill, this, that, and the third. And I was like, well, I'm not doing college. I already played that game and I didn't like it. And so I said I was going to do employment. Dude, by the time I ended up getting out, I went through this whole SFL-TAP thing, ended up being a server at Applebee's, which I absolutely love. If I ever am in desperate need of a job, I'll go be a waiter. Man. I love it, man.
I used to work at Waffle House as a server, like way back in the day. I was 14. They hire 14-year-olds.
And check. If you need a job.
Just in case.
So is waiting tables at Waffle House like most other restaurants? You take orders? No, because you guys yell at each other.
Everything, man. Like, I had to clean the floors, I had to clean the dishes, had to clean the tables. Like, they had servers do literally everything other than cook.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was like just freaking all included. And the thing that killed me was they had me on a shift with one other dude most days, and he was like my age almost. He was like 16 or something. So it was me and him running this store by ourselves, and they just trusted that. I know. I was like, I'm ready for the military at that point. I'm just,
I've already done all the things. It's like, hey, you know how to run this whole story, right?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah. Just trust it. Not on fire.
It didn't burn down. So I thought I was going to get out and go to work. Ended up doing that, which wasn't a bad thing. But then when I finally got a job working for a plumbing company, that plugged me back into the veteran community in an interesting way. There's an organization called the Next Star Legacy Foundation. If I'm not mistaken, it was started by a guy named Keith Mercurio, and I'm name dropping because he's an awesome guy. Does a lot of good stuff, and if he's responsible for that program is responsible for one called Troops to Trades, which does exactly what it sounds like it does, helps veterans get into the trades. And so doing that, I started to use my GI Bill for an apprenticeship. And I was like, this is interesting. I didn't know I could do that, but once I got done with that and I wasn't drawing it anymore, I was like, you know what? I've got my GI Bill. I was working a sales job at that point. I was like, might as well just use it and get a college degree, right?
Oh, yeah.
But this whole SFL-TAP, just like you were talking about, is like, it's so general. There's 3 different tracks. Now, I had already experienced 2 of the tracks that I chose not to go through when I was going through SFL-TAP. Because you can only pick one. It was basically like, what do you want to do when you get out? Do you want to work, go to college, or do an apprenticeship? And once you pick one, that's where you go. So I went through this whole, I don't know how long it was, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever. I don't remember. And I get out, and none of that information is of any use to me because now I'm going to college like I said I wasn't going to do.
Plans change, man.
So I'm like, it's like they try to gear it so that it helps you, and then in the end of it, it ends up not.
Yeah, mine was pretty similar. I will say we didn't have to pick a track or anything. The only thing that they would do is you could opt out of certain curriculum if you had a job already.
Okay.
So if you had like an employer sign a document saying I've hired so and so on this date, whatever, you could opt out of like doing resume writing, stuff like that.
Nice.
But otherwise, they brought in like a small business coach. They brought in obviously the reserve recruiters and stuff to keep people in. And then they had resume writers, all of that. But in the end, there's so many people in that class that you really can't fully give someone a plan on what they're going to do when they get out.
Yeah.
And not everyone in there was actually wanting to get out. Like some people were getting med boarded, but everyone takes the same class.
Yeah.
Some people were retiring after 20 years, which is also a thing that people don't talk about, was like people saying, oh, you need to stay in, or you're going to go to your civilian life. But what I realized when I was in TAPS is like, I'm in the same place as this person, just like 16 years earlier than he is. But here we are in the same room about to go into the same world. I'm like, all I'm doing is postponing the inevitable at that point. So staying in the military out of fear of the civilian world isn't the answer.
Right.
But that's what you hear the most often.
Mm.
And a lot of people don't realize that your retirement check really isn't enough to keep you, in that same quality of life unless you're like a super high rank. But even then, you're really not going to have the same quality of life as when you were in.
Yeah.
Because the payment isn't the same. So you're going to have to get another job. Most people do.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. I worked at Walmart for a short period while I was in. I had use or lose days. I took like 30 days. I took like 30 days of leave, and I was like, I'm bored. I'm going to get a job at Walmart. So,
make bank.
So I'm working at Walmart and then getting off work and going to the pool and drinking beer all day, rinse and repeat. That was one of the best 1 months of my time at Fort Hood, because like I didn't have to work. So if any point in time I wake up and I'm like, I don't feel like going to work, I could call in, I could not, I could show up late, like
what are
whatever.
They gonna do, fire me?
Oh no. But I was working there, and there was this guy that got a job. He was cool as shit. He was a retired first sergeant. It was a very similar story. It was like he was cool as all get out. Like he was super chill. He was pretty calm overall. Came in, he put his head down, he worked, but he was like, yeah, I don't have to have a good paying job.
Yeah.
But my retirement check, I want to say he might have been like 40. So the retirement check, even if he was 45, retirement checks are just not going to carry me. It's not going to help me achieve the goals I want to achieve. I mean, and you and I both know so many people like that. I got a buddy, is awesome as all get out. He retired after 25 years. I want to say he was E8, something like that. He got a ridiculous, like, insane paying job. He's over in California now. Like,
there you go.
I would not be surprised if he makes 6 figures. That brings me to one of my first squad leaders. He's down in Florida right now. He got a job. He actually turned down, I want to say, he makes 6 figures. What he did in the military translates over really well.
That's how
now he has
it.
a government job. I would not be surprised if he told me that most of his day-to-day is drinking coffee. I wouldn't be surprised at all, but he gets...
Pointing.
Yeah. There's, go make a copy of this.
Operator level.
But and I mean, one of the things there is because I asked him while we were both still in, I was like, "Hey man, why don't you go for your 7?" Because he's a retired staff sergeant, he's an E6. Why don't you go for your 7? He was like, "Because I'll never get it." I pissed off too many people. So all the people that he came in with, worked around, or were his supervisors, were now on the board that determine who's he is. So whenever he went up for his look like several times, but they would see his packet and be like, "Yeah, fuck that guy."
Oh man.
So he of course he wanted to retire, and I mean, I know plenty of guys like that, whether they pissed somebody off or they got in trouble too much, and now you know, most of the Army retires around the E6 anyways, but that paycheck is not going to do shit for you for the long term.
Nope.
And it's interesting that you brought up, Cayce, the fact that you're in the same room as the people retiring.
Yeah.
And so I feel like everything you said kind of culminates to the military culture in general, believing that the best retention program is when somebody tells you, well, I think I have these goals, so I'm going to get out and pursue those. And they're like, well, if we yell at them, then they'll stay in. But knowing for a fact that that has literally never worked.
You'll lose your commissary benefits. I'm like, oh no.
You'll have to pay taxes on everyday purchases.
Like, oh God. BX, no.
I just think, you know, I guess I wish that a lot of times they would recognize that, you know, doing something one way, if it doesn't work, pick a different way. And when you find something that does work, because I think there's a lot of people who could be, that were, you know, in a similar situation to you, that chose to get out. I think they could be convinced to stay in for one reason or another, if you could find where the goals align.
Yeah.
If you're like, okay, I've done 4 years, I want to get out, and then they're like, all right, you want to do X, Y, and Z. Well, a prime example of that is reserves. You know, it could be like, well, I know you said you want to get out to do that, but you can actually be in the reserves. It'll supplement your income. You'll get the government benefits. And then instead of getting the training at this job to do this job, you're going to get the training here and in the military.
Yeah.
You're going to maintain. And I think selling it in that fashion is a much better approach. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's leaders out there that do that.
Yeah. Educate people. Let them know their options. I mean, that was one of my biggest, like my last year of being in, my biggest thing was leave people with the most education I can give them. So I was like putting together binders and stuff as far as education benefits are concerned. Like the Air Force had a crap ton of education things, like tuition assistance program where they would give you $2,500 a semester just towards like education. And that's not touching your GI Bill. So you can knock out all of your minors before you even get out of the military. And that's on like a 6-year contract. Like Air Force Cool, which is the certification program. That's how I got my airframe and power plant license, which is how my military career transfers to the civilian side and lets me like work on civilian aircraft, and how I almost got the engine job. But
that's awesome, man.
Yeah, but educating people on how to use it, because I had literally talked to one person that had gotten it before, and no one else knew about it. So I was like, well, shoot, I'm going to go through this process, write down everything as far as how I did it, and then let people know. And through that, there's like 3 people I know of at least that got it.
Yeah.
And like leaving a legacy of more knowledge than you had when you were in that position. I think that's how you'll keep people around, and it's how you'll keep people around that want to be around. It's not keeping people trapped because they're afraid of something. It's keeping them there because they had the ability to make an educated decision and say, I want to stay here because of this reason.
Yeah.
Like reserves has you get the military TRICARE, whatever, which is a great benefit when especially if you have a family or something, like knowing you'll be leaving the military, you know, you'll lose your healthcare benefits, but if you stay reserves, you'll get healthcare benefits for like $200 a month or something, which is still pretty great.
Yeah.
And that's not knowing whether or not you even have a job lined up. Like that's a great fallback plan.
Yeah.
And if you're your contract can roll over into the reserves, then you don't even have to make another commitment.
Nice.
So I'm like that. Those little things can really make an impact in keeping someone's career going in a positive direction for both parties.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really comes down to leadership and who's around you, because that's one of the biggest things about the military is you are constantly meeting new people. You're under new leadership all the time. Like, all of your friends change constantly. You're really just having to adapt. Like, I remember talking to my parents and realizing that, like, people they work with literally die of old age that they've been with for so long. And in the military, you just really can't fathom that. Like, you might hear, oh yeah, this person died after they retired of old age or something, but you're never around someone for that long.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's good and bad. If you have if you have crappy leadership, they're only there for so long, but good leadership is hard to come by at times.
Yeah. That's crazy, man. It's interesting to think that, you know, just by altering the approach, you know, oftentimes the outcome could be different. I like that you talked about how you were like, yeah, I use this benefit and then I put together a binder like to help other people out. I did something comparable, so it was a little bit different than a benefit. It was a process I had to go through, which seemed very extreme. Normally you put together like a leave packet and it's like a form somebody signs.
Mm-hmm.
This was like a 1-inch binder that I had to like put in page protectors, get this document signed by this guy. And actually, once I put it all together, I finally got approved. I want to say it was probably 6 months to a year of me working to get approved. And then this other kid was like, oh, I'm going through something similar right now. And I was like, well, I'll let you have the packet. And I had told him it was a permanent loan. Go ahead and use it as long as you need it. Bring it back when you're done.
Yeah.
And I never got it back. But I'm hoping that it helped him, because it's interesting how these resources exist, but it's almost like they're just behind this invisible wall.
Yeah, you have to find them yourself for a lot of cases. And I mean, I feel like if you use a benefit, it's your duty to at least tell one person about it.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a supervisor for someone or you have troops under you. It's like, it should be your job to prepare people to leave the military, because regardless of how long you're in, everyone does.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's literally no reason to prevent someone from bettering themselves and getting ready for that situation.
I think that's an interesting perspective. I agree with that. As you were saying it, I was like, holy shit. Whether you get out after a single contract or you retire, everybody leaves the military at some point. And so, I mean, just like you said, it doesn't make any sense to not prepare them for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of what you said too, Cayce, can be applied even at civilian organizations.
Oh, without a doubt.
If somebody chooses to pursue a different angle, or, you know, start their own business and go out on their own, they're currently working at a place, I think it's in everyone's best interest to help with that, support that, facilitate it as best as possible.
Without a doubt. Yeah, when you look at like the giant companies like Google, Silicon Valley style stuff, and their business ideology as far as their company is concerned is like, treat people well and they'll want to stay around. And if they do want to move on to something else, it's like, just get the best you can out of them now and then hope they decide to stay around. If not, then I mean, you helped better someone and that'll pay dividends later on.
Yeah. When I Joe helped me a shit ton with my business. The guy that's in the first 2 recording sessions we did, he's going to be here again tomorrow. We're going to record some more, but he made a comment because I was basically explaining to him how, you know, I can't necessarily afford the good talent, so to speak, but the talent that I can afford requires a certain amount of training. And he talks about how there's 2 guys at a bar, and they're like top level executives in a company, and one of them says, well, what happens if we train people and bring them up to speed on things, and they decide to leave, and the other guy says, "What if we don't?" And they stay.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I'm like, that's a very interesting perspective. So it's almost like, basically giving your people 100% regardless of whether they're going to stay or leave, because at the end of the day, I mean, that's everyone's reputation involved, right?
Yeah. I mean, and how well you treat your employees is also going to determine how many people you attract to those positions.
Yeah.
Like, that's why you have people fighting over those Silicon Valley positions, because they know, like, oh, there's free childcare there, stuff like that, things that everyone needs, that it really doesn't cost you that much in the long run, but you're getting that much added value in who you bring to your team.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely a huge piece of bettering yourself and your business.
Definitely. So you don't have to name drop, but I'm definitely curious if you experienced like some really positive leadership, somebody that helped you out a ton, and what that kind of looked like.
Yeah, I got to shout out. Name is Sergeant Fleming. He was kind of an enigma in the shop, because he was an active guard member, and like everyone was active duty, but he was active guard, and he was a master sergeant, but he had been in for like 20 some years, so he like knew everything, but literally did nothing. Like, he would disappear, going to the he'd be like, "Hey, want to go to the commissary?" And then if you said yes, you wouldn't be seen like the rest of the day, because then he'd be like, "Oh, let's go run another errand or something," just be gone forever. But I mean, guys like that are great to have around in a shop, because what they bring is like that wisdom.
Yeah.
And so in my 4 years of being there, I saw him work on a jet like twice.
Nice.
But if you had questions about being on the civilian side, stuff like that, he had been there and done that, because he's just been around for so long. Like, he had been so many different jobs, and he was always willing to talk about it because he had the time to, since he was not working on a jet. But something I always remember was I was actually giving a tour of our shop to a senior master sergeant who came in to do a inspection on us, like make sure we're up to code and all these different things. And it was like my job to make sure we were up to code. So if anything was wrong, it was basically on me. And he asked me like, "Oh, what are your plans? Are you re-enlisting?" Something like that. And I said, "Oh, no, I'm getting out because of so-and-so reasons, whatever." He was like, "Oh man, I don't want to see you at Home Depot." Something like that. Basically, it was like a throw off saying, "I'm going to work at Home Depot and he's going to see me working there," or whatever. And he kind of went along in that same vein, continuing for a little bit. And I just stood there like, I mean, I don't plan on it, but what's wrong with working at Home Depot, number one? Like, but I remember after that, Sergeant Fleming heard it, I guess, and he pulled me to the side and he was like, "Listen, I don't care what that guy says. You're not going to fail because I know you're not a failure." He was like, "I don't want you to be that guy who stays in because he's afraid of getting out and puts people down to try to keep them where he's at." He's like, I know you're a quality person and you'll bring a lot to wherever you go. So just don't put any stock into what he said. And I mean, that it meant a lot, especially during that time of turbulence of like, you really go back and forth about, am I making the right decision? Because your life is about to change.
Yep.
But for me, that was like a really, pivotal moment. And I don't think a lot of people are fortunate to have someone like that to just, pop in and give that like heartfelt encouragement.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely have to shout him out. But yeah, just, not giving people the negative side of things is a huge part of it. And I'm like, there's a difference between education and fear mongering. Because I'm like, could I have the possibility of being homeless getting out? Yes, and I did. But at the same time, I'm not anymore. Yeah. So I'm like, possibilities aren't always going to be that constant reality.
Yeah. And
if I stayed in simply to avoid being homeless for a month, then I'd still be active duty right now and thinking, what if I had gotten out? And I mean, that's not how you should live your life.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's awesome, though. And always think of that guy. I think for us, a lot of times it was the warrant officers in the units, because we'd have like one, and then, in the maintenance field, in the motor pool, there's usually a W3 or something like that. You never see them. They're like, oh, yeah, Chief so-and-so. And everybody's like, who? He shows up to one rock drill one time before we go to Camp Atterbury to be like, make sure that you PMCS your vehicles. I'm going to go.
See you guys later.
I'm like,
Where are you?
Are you sure you're at the right place? Like, we don't actually know you, so
can you give me orders?
Are you in charge? Am I in charge? Like, how does this work? But I talked to a bunch of guys. I would say, like the dude I talked about out of Florida. He was very similar. It was like, when I first got into the Army, I was pretty sure that he hated everyone and would rather just yell at you. And then at the end of the day, I talked to him recently. He's out, I'm out. We both have beards. We met actually at a Waffle House out. I want to say it was like in Wilson or somewhere out there. And he was driving down because I think he had worked in D.C. and so he was moving down to Florida. And so I talked to him over there, and I was like, "Hey, like, what's the dynamic here? Like, what was your angle? I met you at Fort Polk when I went there, and then we reconnected while we were in Germany. He was stationed, I think, at Mannheim, and I was at Baumholder, and he was like, I just wanted him to explain, like, when I see you in Germany, you acted different, your priorities seemed different, but at Fort Polk, it seemed like you were high-strung. He was like, because if I put pressure on soldiers, basically, he was in a line unit at Fort Polk, so he had soldiers. He was in charge of an entire squad. In Germany, he was in charge of a section, and it was basically just him. Of course, he had other people in the garrison that he was responsible for, but it was time for him to take a back seat. And I wish I had talked to him sooner, because I could have done the same thing. I was a desk sergeant while I was at Baumholder. I could have focused more on my own health and well-being than, causing the problems I did for myself.
Yeah.
But he was like, with that squad at Fort Polk, being high-strung, holding people to a higher standard, he was like, Smeltz, I learned to run a 13-minute 2-mile and exceed that because I just wanted to make sure I was always the fastest person in my squad. I always wanted to have the highest PT test score. I always wanted to make sure. He literally took the phrase lead from the front and just practiced it. And I thought that was awesome because it's like the brand new private to a company. It's like, all right, well, I was in basic training. I got yelled at. I show up here and this guy yells at me.
Yeah.
Cool. Makes sense. But then when he gave me that perspective, and it was like, I'm high strung there because I want to be the best so that I can help pull everyone else up and basically raise that bar. Because you don't have to have a perfect score on a PT test, but if I have a perfect score, like a 300, and you score 270, that's still pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And so that sets you up for career progression and opportunities and whatever you want to do, whether it's inside or outside of the military. And I just thought that was awesome. I think if I were to pick someone that was a decent mentor to me the entire time I was in it, would be that guy. Because I even talked to him on the phone after that. But I mean, very similar to what you said, but I think with him, it was interesting how that, at first when I saw him, I was like, oh, okay, this guy's an asshole. But later on, I was like, oh, no, he does that shit because he actually cares.
Yeah. Yeah, the servant leadership is definitely one of the hardest to master, but most valuable. Really ending up having to sacrifice yourself for your people, but that's how you get better people. But yeah, and I mean, getting the best PT score and everything, that also gives not only something for everyone you lead to look at, but also someone to go to if they need help with something on it, because they know you've already mastered it. I'm like, because that's valuable too. I mean, because I don't know about Army, but Air Force, if you fail a PT test, you just get put in like the remedial training, whatever, and you have to run around. But that's with like a random group of people and stuff. There's a difference between your squad mates and everything trying to build you up and get you back into the team, and you just doing the bare minimum necessary as far as policy and procedure is concerned. I'm like, one builds a strong team, the other might build a stronger person.
That's an interesting way to look at it, because we had the same thing, but I can remember, I want to say probably at Fort Polk, probably at Fort Hood as well, there were times I was in charge of the remedial PT. And it's like, this is just something that you have to do as a leader. So I feel like that investment isn't there, whereas like you just talked about, when it's your squad mates, when it's somebody that's part of a team. So we would go on runs and we would have that guy that, you know, I had plenty of friends in the military who just struggled with weight the entire time they were in. It was just this thing that they had a problem with. And, you know, when that guy would fall out or whatever, as a leader, you might fall out to, you know, help encourage him, push him along and stuff. And it's like, it's a lot different because he wants to be a part of it. He wants to be up there with the rest of the squad. Whereas if you're just in remedial PT, especially if you're the only one from your squad, it's like, all right, well, that guy's here because he has to be as the leader. I'm here because I have to be. So maybe I don't put in as much effort, and now it doesn't necessarily get the result everyone was hoping for.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, for us also, it really puts you on that negative pedestal for all of your leadership too. Is if you fail a PT test, then everyone knows about it in the shop. They know, oh, that guy's getting time off work to go to do this remedial PT while I'm out here working on the jet, whatever. I mean, and there's some people that generally just don't want to do it. Like, there's people that just don't want to be fit. But like you said, there's people that actually have that want and that need to be in the pack, and they just don't have that support structure they need. Because I mean, being fit is really it's a lifelong commitment. It's not that hour-long session of running or anything. Like, you can do that, but if you go and just eat whatever you want immediately afterwards, or you're not doing anything else in your off time, then it's going to be worthless to you, and you'll be in the same position a year later. It's really a culture shift that needs to happen.
Yeah. This guy I work with now always says, I know, because the saying goes, knowledge is power, but he says applied knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And he's like, because I know what it takes to have a six-pack.
Yeah.
Diet, exercise, consistently, you know, discipline, a gym membership. But you don't see a six-pack. So is it more knowing or doing?
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of that personally. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm a doer. So as soon as somebody's talking about something, I want to start executing it. But I think you're exactly right. It's like that can detract from the culture. So I feel like we're right back to what we talked about before, where it's like, it's a good idea, Ferry. It's like, oh, if somebody fails PT, we can have like this special session that we force them to go to.
Yeah. That'll fix their mindset.
Like mandatory. Did you guys have mandatory fun days?
Yeah, we did.
Oh
man, I tell freaking
your officers wearing the New Balance shoes with the cargo shorts.
No, man. So my worst experience with that was prior to leaving on deployment. I was visiting family and everything in North Carolina because my base was in South Carolina, and we were on like our week-long leave, whatever, prior to deployment that we were fortunate enough to get. But literally in the middle of that, leadership made us come back to base, and I was like, what do they want us here for? And they wanted to bring us all back just to say bye. And this was like people I had never seen before. They're, higher up, whatever. And they literally brought all of these people away from their families. I had to travel back 3 hours just to hear this random dude say bye to me. and be like, "Oh, you're a valuable member of the team," something like that. I'm like, I was freaking
Who
livid.
are you?
They didn't tell us what it was for. They just said you have to be here at 0800, and I'm like, mother. Like I
So you said in the middle of it. So is this like you're on leave and then you go there for dude to say bye and then you went back home again?
Yep.
Really?
Yep. So
How did that work for people from California?
Like
We don't care. Be there.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I'm like, man. And what's even worse is, they all say bye and stuff like as you're getting on the plane to leave to your first base that you stop at or whatever. So I'm like, you literally called us in here for nothing, man. And then when we were coming back from Afghanistan and got stuck in Qatar for like an extra 2 weeks, half of us left on the jet back to South Carolina, and then half of us got stuck because the next aircraft broke, and then the aircraft that they sent to replace that aircraft freaking broke. So we were there for an unidentified amount of days at the time, and
I mean, you could have fixed it, right?
The thing that it was a civilian aircraft, but we were literally offering because we were on the.
Please, we know how these things work.
The second time it broke, we were sitting on the plane for 2 hours.
We want to go home.
We were sitting on the plane. They were like, "All right, everyone, prepare to leave," and then the jet freaking shut off, and we were like. This was the second jet that they had sent to fly us out. So everyone's heart just sunk, and you had to reprocess back into Qatar, which meant sitting through another hour-long briefing that we had already seen twice now, which made literally no sense. We had dudes like crying in line and stuff because they thought they were about to see their family, but you had to literally get back into Qatar just to sit and wait until however long it took for them to get another plane or fix that one. And anyway, we pulled out. Shit. We were looking on social media one day, and the freaking PR back at our base was like welcoming back all of our airmen from Afghanistan, and we're like, man, that's half your airmen from Afghanistan. We're over there like pissed off. You had airmen spouses on the page cussing out the PR people.
What do you mean all?
Where's my husband then? And stuff like that. And I'm like, God dang. And we get back to base finally, and we get back to base finally to do another command briefing where our commander was basically like, "Well, guys, I'm sorry. It wasn't my fault. Hopefully it won't happen again. Stuff happens." I'm like, man, we had the NCO in charge of us all at the time that was supposed to like give us briefings, whatever, about like when the next plane should be here, when we should expect. He would always get up on a table or something, and one day he had shorts that were like down to his knee or something, and then the next day they were like he had another pair that was up here, so we started laughing at him, and he was like, "Yep, every day we're here extra, my shorts are getting shorter, guys." We were like, "Oh God, no, like it's getting worse."
Please help us get home. That's crazy, man. We had a plane break coming back from Iraq, but it broke in Germany, which was funny because I was like, how did it break? Like, we were literally just in the air. And then
good luck. Yeah, it
broke, and then they drove us. So we were at an airport with a hotel, and I don't know because I didn't get stationed in Germany until after this, so I didn't pay much attention. But I think we landed in Ramstein, and they drove us to Frankfurt, or vice versa. I can't remember. But the point is that those are about 3 hours apart, and wherever we landed was an airport with a hotel, and they had us get off the plane, get on a bus, and drove us to another airport with a hotel for us to stay in the hotel. And then we weren't allowed to go into the airport over there, and then there was like, it was like the commander allowed the platoons to make the decisions on whether or not you could change into civilian clothes.
Oh man!
So 2 platoons are running around wearing whatever they want, buying clothes, and the other 2 had to stay in uniform.
Sucks for you guys.
So we're like, where's the why behind this what? And then the other funny thing is 15 months. Okay.
Yeah.
M4 9mm NVGs. by your side 100% of the time.
Yep.
Shit, shower, shave, mission, nighttime, daytime, next to you at all times. I think the only exception is when you went on leave, you would give your weapons to somebody else, in which case they were with them 100% of the time. And so never leaving our side. You would go to the DFAC, you'd have your M4, you would put it right there. You know, if you were lucky to have a little bipod, you could set it down nice and neat.
There you go.
Our plane breaks down in Germany, and they're like, just leave them on the plane.
What?
I was like, excuse me. 15 months. We just had to the whole time, all the time. And now they're like, don't worry, we're going to lock the plane. I was like, what the fuck? You know, a lot of the doors we just left back there had locks as well. Like, we could just lock them there. I was so confused. I was like, this is crazy. So we leave our shit, all our sensitive items on the plane, lock the door, and drive 3 hours the other direction to another airport with a hotel. We were there for about 3 or 4 days, and they were like, all right, it's fixed. We're going home. It was crazy, though. That was my first semi-German experience.
You ever wake up and be like, oh, freak, where's my rifle?
Not anymore. I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely done that.
Yeah.
I mean, I got out in 2015, so
yeah,
it's been a minute for me, but I've definitely done. I mean, I did that after deployment at Fort Polk in Germany. Sometimes at Fort Hood, because at Fort Hood, sometimes we would draw weapons going in FTX, come back. So similar experience, even though it was only for maybe like a week. Now you have your M4 and you're sleeping with it.
Yeah.
So that, because, you know, leadership likes to fuck with people. So you want to make sure it doesn't get taken. And now I'm back in my barracks room or whatever, and I'm like, where's my weapon?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we had a couple guys that would like leave theirs in the bathroom or something every now and then. But what freaking killed me is they give us these old freaking Vietnam era looking M16s. We didn't have like the new M4s. They gave them to the people that went on the rotation after us. But we got these ugly, long M16s that literally were from Vietnam. And we were like walking around with it. It just had the regular 2-point sling, so it was uncomfortable as mess. Now, we weren't like, you know, we weren't forward operating, anything like that, so it wasn't like we were expecting any ground attacks, anything. We just got like mortared and stuff. So it wasn't like we were generally expected to use it. But when I showed up and saw that, it's a little disheartening, I'll be honest. Especially when the rifle that they train you on all throughout your career is an M4, and then they give you this old piece of crap, and they're like, good luck, buddy.
That's interesting, because you guys train. So I trained with the M16 in 2005, but when I got out, we had M4s the entire time.
Yeah.
We had M4s in the line unit stateside. We had M4s on deployment. I think the only time I saw an M16 after that was occasionally for like a funeral detail, because the height, if you stood at the position of attention, was just enough to hold it properly.
Yeah. Yeah, we had an M16 in basic, but that really doesn't, Air Force wise, that really doesn't count because it's such a minor part of your actual basic training. But as far as like weapons qual and everything, that's done with an M4 with a red dot on it. And then I get over to Afghanistan and they give me an M16 with iron sights, and I'm like, now I did competitive shooting before, so I know how to, I didn't feel bad for me, but guys that like don't know how to line up iron sights and stuff, and I'm like, what are they gonna do if it hits the fan? And sure enough, one day we got suicide bombed.
Golly.
Yeah, we were one of the first in a long time, I think, at that base that actually had to take up arms. But I remember we were sitting in our shop and we were all in there at the time, but we just heard this loud boom and
the earth shatters.
Yeah, it loud as mess. And this was like not super close to us, but you know, after a certain while, you get that fight or flight automatic response. So even if you don't know what it is, your body still responds to what it is.
And you feel it. Like
it's weird.
I hear shit out here all the time.
Man, me
and
too.
She's like, oh, you know, is that fireworks or a gunshot? And I'm like, that's fireworks. I can tell.
Yeah.
You can tell. And then what you're talking about, Cayce, like just that, because I was with group. We played Op 4 for them, and their first day we met up with them, they were at the range, and they set off like fucking 300 feet of deck cord or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You feel that shit, even if it's far away.
Yeah, like it was bad. But we didn't know what it was. Nothing like there would be explosions every now and then because we would get mortared and stuff. But there's usually a warning before that because we had the phalanx system and everything.
Nice.
And if it was a controlled det, they always announced that before, but no one heard it. So there was this sense of confusion, like, what was that? So I just started throwing on my flak vest, and the other shop, some of the guys like started laughing at me or something. But I'm like, I know what I freaking heard, and that wasn't good. So I'm getting this vest on, and they were like laughing, whatever. And then all of a sudden, the freaking starts playing over the loudspeakers for a ground attack, and it's saying ground attack, man your station, stuff like that. So everyone's just like deer in headlights at that point, like didn't expect it.
You're geared up and you're like, hurry up, fuckers.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm already ready, man. But
let's go.
But yeah, I'm ready with my freaking Vietnam M16 and my one magazine, 30 round magazine. Like, I'm ready. Let's get some. What kills me is we had like our higher ranks and everything. They were in a separate building that was like up. You had to go out of our shop and then go up these steps. And they wanted someone specifically at that door. So you had to like run outside, run up there just to guard the, you know, high ranking people, whatever. And my shop chief at the time, he wanted to do everything himself, which I mean, I respect, but he didn't let us leave the room. So I basically guarded the shop. There were some guys that were just like scared out of their minds. So they just kind of sat there. But just that general feeling of, you know, like we're getting attacked right now. It turns out that they actually built the suicide vest on base by smuggling the pieces in. They were some of the foreign national workers. I think 2 of them worked in conjunction, but they smuggled all of the pieces in and over a couple months and built the vest and bombed. They were doing a fun run or something, and we lost like 4 guys. And that was best case scenario because they actually saw him approaching and they went up to him to stop him. And that's when he detonated. So he didn't actually get to the group. Wow. So, I mean, while it was a horrible situation, it was really, they were fortunate he didn't get closer. But it was definitely one of those experiences that you'll remember for a long time. And like afterwards, when they did the casket roll by and everyone was standing by the road and stuff, like it was rough. And then after that, they basically shut the base down, so everyone got kicked off, and like we were on MREs for about a month. And I can't complain about that because we were fortunate to have a DFAC in the first place. But yeah, it was one of those things that you just really didn't expect. But they also shut off the Wi-Fi like instantly to keep people from, I guess, transmitting signal. Yeah. Now, the funny thing for me, I had T-Mobile, and T-Mobile had an international plan that, unbeknownst to me, so I actually had like 3G service in Afghanistan for free. So I was able to like, I showed up, I got off the plane in Afghanistan, and I was like, I have bars here. And then it said, welcome to Afghanistan. Your plan allows so-and-so and like 30 cents a minute for calls, whatever. But
holy shit.
I had free internet and free texting. So I was able to send my family members messages like, hey, I'm all right if you see anything on the news. And sure enough, literally like 30 minutes after this happened, before we even knew it was a suicide bomb, there was a news story out. And I was like, I don't know how they do that crap, but they knew. But But yeah, I mean, it was crazy.
That is crazy. I had to unlock my V3XX Razor on, I think, Singular while we were going over there, so I got it unlocked. Buy an Iraqna SIM card.
Yep.
And then once I did that, it was like I could pay for minutes, but it was super expensive, so I could use an AT&T calling card, which would soften the blow. It was still like 50 cents a minute.
Yeah.
And then connect it via Bluetooth so I could put it on the T-barrier outside of my room and talk on the phone. And I want to say I made like one phone call that way, maybe two. Because I wasn't as worried about the money as it just wasn't reliable.
Yeah, choppy.
I was like...
That just leads to more heartache, too.
Yeah. 3G.
Yep.
That's funny, man.
Sometimes
I forget the distance or the amount of time in between our deployments.
Yeah, right? I'm like... Well, the funny thing is, it wasn't like it was the military didn't put up the towers. It was actually an Afghanistan company, whatever.
Yeah.
T-Mobile was just contracted with. But like when you first get to base and you're waiting on your clearances and stuff to get access to Wi-Fi, like all you have is if there's a USO on base or something, that's where you can make a phone call.
Yeah.
But I didn't have to wait for that because I had T-Mobile. I'm like, so shout out to T-Mobile.
Well, plus, I mean, I think the iPhone came out in 2007.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So that would be...
And I left July of 2007, so...
That too.
I don't even know if when I left, if it was out, and if it was out, I don't think that many people in my company would have had it by then because... Yeah. I mean, I had a smartphone, but we called it a PDA phone. It was a Trio 650. It worked off Windows.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember. That was on Singular... That was when you could tether with like a USB cord, and it was just unlimited. You just got unlimited internet through your cell phone because I would sit at the gate and work on correspondence courses on like a dial-up speed internet.
Nice.
I could use that all day.
Yeah.
Now it's like if you have a hotspot, they're like, all right, but 10 gigs.
Yeah, I know. I'm
like, come on, guys.
Being stingy with the Wi-Fi.
Right. That's crazy, man. Yeah, I don't think we saw anything that drastic while I was deployed. Had a few squads take EFPs, because we did a lot of transport, convoy security, stuff like that. We took IDF probably every day.
Yeah.
Near ECP-4. I don't know what the deal with that was. Sometimes, I think before we got there, they had hit the defect. A lot of times they would overshoot it or just miss in general. There wasn't any, but dang, suicide bomber. And then like you think because we were training ICOs, Iraqi corrections officers, to take over a portion of our mission, and at one point they weren't there anymore. And we were like, what happened? They were like, we found out that one was like a planted insurgent or something. Yeah. So it's like, I guess the background check process isn't as reliable when you're dealing with foreign countries.
I know. I was shocked to get there and actually see foreign national like making the food and stuff. I'm like, I didn't expect it. I mean, nothing against them because I mean, it's great we're able to like give them jobs and stuff and contribute in that way. But it wasn't something that I expected to see for sure. But yeah, we had the C-Rams that would shoot down most of the IDFs. But if you have a jet taking off or landing, C-Rams shut off. So they took notice of that and they would launch an IDF about the time when they would see a jet hit the flight line. So at that point, it's basically like, oh, just get down. But I mean, IDFs, you're not really like super afraid of after a certain point. You like, we had one that hit the flight line before, but otherwise, most of them didn't really do much. We had a giant case of mattresses that they hit. You're like, our mattresses. But no, we were literally in processing to the base, and they were giving us like your initial briefing saying, this is what you do, blah, 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 when this happens. And they were on the IDF screen. and we got an incoming. So like we were inside this giant. It was a building, but it wasn't like, it didn't seem super secure, but it was a hardened shelter. Yeah. So some of us got down, some of us ran outside to get into a bunker, and that was like sort of close, but you still had to run outside to get to that bunker.
Yeah.
Now they hadn't really gotten through the slide yet, but everyone that ran out into the bunker got yelled at because they're like, why would you idiots leave a hardened shelter to go outside to get into another hardened shelter? They're like, I didn't know. Like, man, I'm new.
I think the I would like to say that the part where your mattresses got blown up and you're like, no, our mattresses is probably the most Air Force thing I've heard today.
As long as it's not the Wi-Fi.
Oh, we're good. Thank goodness. But yeah, I think one thing a lot of people don't think of is if you've got like a 155 round coming in, and you know, outside of our hooches was like this T barrier, you know, bunker type deal, and you would just go in there and hopefully be protected because there were still gaps in it, and maybe some of them had the ones on the end, maybe they didn't.
Yeah.
But if it hit that directly, you were probably fucked.
Yeah.
You know, so the point of a hardened shelter in general is to just deflect if it lands like over here and there's shrapnel or, you know, a nearby explosion that is not on top of your head. You know, and so in their minds, I mean, the same thing ran through my head. It's like, well, we have to get in the bunker because that's what they always talk about. But if it hits outside, unless it comes through the roof of the building that you're in, then you're probably going to be all right.
At some point, you're just like, well, it's my time, I guess. I'm like, when you first get there, you're like, oh, get down every minute. And then if you hear it in the middle of the night, you like roll out of your bed, get on the ground. But by the fourth month, fifth month, you're like, oh, I'm fine. You know?
Yeah.
If it's my time, I mean, that's a specific round to hit me if it does at this point.
I think we got lucky, and most of the people shooting at us in Iraq just like their sleep, because we heard it at night sometimes, but the same thing you talked about, you know, kind of just listen for a second. No, I think we're good. We go back to sleep.
No whistle, we're good.
Yeah.
One hit, sort of, it was like probably, I don't know, maybe 200 yards from me at one point. And it was the one that hit the flight line that was really close to our shop. But like, you know, after it hits, you have to do a par sweep, go around, try to find it, and then mark it, whatever, because there might still be unexploded ordnance, stuff like that. But like, we went outside and it smelled like burning plastic. I'm like, that wasn't something that I expected either, a mortar round to smell like burning plastic, but now I know. But yeah, at least for us, they started, the way that they would launch them is like have a block of ice or something, whatever, that would degrade, and have the mortar round up at the top of a slide, so that once that would degrade, they would leave the scene, because they know we would blow it up instantly because we can track the trajectory using our giant blimps we had in the sky. We had 2 giant blimps in the sky that would like had these crazy cameras on them, and they could actually tell you like the year that the mortar round was manufactured by the wiggle as it goes up in the sky, how high it goes.
So we had those blimps. I had no idea that's what they did.
Yeah,
those things are crazy.
That's how they pinpoint where it comes from.
Why would they not shoot the blimps down?
I mean, I doubt the mortars can reach it. We had one blimp fly away. Like, it got untethered.
There it goes.
That's literally what happened. I think once it landed, we like blew it up or something, but like it was just gone one day. I went outside and I was like, well, that's new. And then we just put another one up after. But yeah, so we would triangulate where they launched it from, so they knew I don't want to be in that situation once this round goes off. But fortunately for us, that makes it hard as mess to aim it. But at the same time, we don't necessarily get the guys that are doing it because they're already gone, which means it's going to keep happening. Because they're using like munitions left over from when Russia was there, stuff like that, left from Cold War, whatever.
Golly.
Yeah, so
that's crazy, man. They're so smart because we would go and we had Dukes, we had Rhinos, and then we had chains on the Rhinos. So the chain on a Rhino, the Rhino is just a box. You flip the switch, it's got wires running to it, it heats. And so if it's an IED or an EFP that detonates based off the heat of the engine, this mimics the heat of the engine at the distance you choose.
Oh, that's crazy.
So it's basically, it's funny though, because if you saw it, it's not super complicated.
Yeah.
It's a box. Basically, the sides are wood, and then there's a metal frame, and then it's on a rod. It's just like, kind of like this, but you know, where you press the metal button so it can extend, like telescoping.
Yeah.
You know? So basically like that. So you could set it all the way out there or real close to the truck. It didn't really matter. And then you turn the switch on inside the truck. There's a toggle switch, and it's like you turn it on, then your engine heat mimicking box is on. We called it a Rhino. Kind of made the truck look like it was a rhinoceros. So if it picked up that, it would blow up. And so what they started doing, and I'm pretty sure all this progression was before I got there. Yeah. But what they started doing is like, oh, okay, so, you know, they fake it. So we'll just put a trip wire. Because if you put a trip wire out, it hits the wheels, it detonates the same time that the engine heat one would.
Yeah.
Only, you know, the engine heat is being mimicked, so we'll use a trip wire. So what do? Put a fucking chain on the Rhino.
Yeah.
So it hits the trip wire, so now it still detonates early. So your truck still gets fucked up. You probably have a deadline truck. It probably blows up the entire engine. It probably blows all the wheels off and the tires and everything. But we get to live.
Yeah. That's always the best option.
Yeah. And then the Duke is just cell phone jamming, which is why earlier when you were talking about them shutting off the Wi-Fi, it was surprising. Because I'm like, well, they could just put a Duke up, flip that switch, and then your T-Mobile phone wouldn't do shit.
Yeah, because that's how still worked.
That's how you take the convoy. There's a distance that varies. That you want to stay within a certain distance, but it basically creates a bubble around the truck that things can't detonate via a cell phone signal. It jams all electronic devices. And so each truck had it. So if your bubble is like, you know, 100 meters around this truck, then you got another truck right behind it, and that's 100 meters, and it creates like a caterpillar type bubble. And so we jammed it that way, but they always figured something out. So
always something new.
Yeah, the EFP went off on my old squad. They got hit. The advantage there was it was aimed for someone using the off-ramp from Route Irish in Iraq. And they weren't using the off-ramp. They were headed straight down the highway. So I think it might have just been, I don't know. It could have been detonated via cell phone. I'm not sure. I don't know the details of it. But because of the aim, it was higher, so it did hit the trucks, and it tore up the antennas and stuff like that. But luckily, you know, nobody got severely injured or killed. So it came out 100% with that one. That was good.
Yeah. No, I got to see some cool vehicles over there that I wouldn't have expected. Like what we mainly saw were MRAPs.
Yep.
We had a lot of those, which are a lot more huge in person than I thought they'd be. I got to get in one at one point. The security forces were just parked outside, so we went over and asked, like, hey, can I get in? Because, I mean, for us, it's cool. For them, it's being cooped up with 4 dudes for however many hours inside this tiny tin can. But, like, we got to move the turret around and everything and look at the cameras and switch it to, like, thermal, all of that. And you could, like, zoom in and see the surrounding villages that were however many miles away, which was really cool. But they had those little rollers in the front, some of them, like the specialized ones. And they'd have that side chain for the side chain mesh stuff to, like, trigger the RPG, whatever, if it comes in, and trigger it before it actually hits the side or something.
I feel like what you're talking about Because I know you said there's security forces, but were they conducting route clearance?
Now,
Because the rollers, I didn't normally see the rollers unless it was like engineers or infantry doing route clearance.
Now, they didn't drive those around base normally. Like, I just saw those when they were going to do route clearance and stuff towards off base.
Yeah.
And you'd like see them parked around and stuff like that. But they would had these. Ours didn't look like they didn't have wood or anything. These looked like they came with the vehicle.
Yeah.
And they just had a crap ton of metal and it looked like barbed wire or whatever, I guess, to grab trip wires or something, but stick out in front of it. And then I saw like a vehicle that is now my dream vehicle. It was two contractors they were in like a movie style looking dune buggy with a 50 cal on top. The one guy was sitting down driving, the other guy was standing up on a 50 cal. It was like a tan colored dune buggy, and it had a giant Punisher skull on the front of it. I was like, man, guy's just driving around for photo ops.
I want that.
Yeah, I'm like, please. It was the freaking 50 cal was as long as the front of the dune buggy too. So I'm like, man, you guys are lucky.
Yeah, those vehicles, the route clearance ones, those rollers you're talking about is I think in part for pressure plate IEDs and stuff like that, like mines, basically.
Mm-hmm.
The only purpose of our rhinos, like what I talked about being made out of wood, it's literally a box, and it's probably maybe about this big, and it's suspended in the air with that telescoping arm. So the primary purpose of that is like prevention. So what you're talking about, I think what scares me most about that is like those guys are looking for IEDs. Like the entire purpose of their mission when they would roll outside the wire is let's go find shit that blows up and either control that or accidentally detonate it so that other people running missions don't get blown up.
Yeah.
You can keep that job.
Yep.
That's like Hurt Locker shit right there.
Yeah, I'm like, man, freaking, they don't make a uniform to fit those balls.
That's one way of putting it.
Yeah, we had one aircraft go down, but thankfully it was just a drone. But we didn't know that at first. It just said aircraft down, whatever, as they were announcing it over the radio, because we had crash recovery right next door to us, whose job it is to like go out and recover all the important stuff off of the aircraft. But as they were announcing everything, they were like souls on board 0, and we were like, what sense does that make? And then we eventually put 2 and 2 together and realized it was a drone. But these guys were like terrified they were gonna have to go outside the wire and stuff because they're used to just doing regular maintenance. But it turns out that they just blew up the drone on the ground wherever it crashed into, just to make sure that everything was gone, so no one had to go out there or anything. But we got really scared for a minute there because we thought we lost one of our aircraft or something. But like, ugh.
So did you ever have a plane like blown up or crash or anything like that?
Not in my experience, no. My base had just had one right before I got there, but I was fortunate not to experience that.
No.
Because, I mean, it is rough, like, if you work on a jet day after day and then knowing it went down and hoping the pilot's all right and everything. But usually if it's like a stateside crash, chances are they'll be able to punch out or something. But yeah, so I was fortunate in that regard anyway.
That's crazy. You
Yeah.
don't really think about stuff like that.
Yeah, but like the evasive maneuvers and stuff you have to do when you go back, when you land in Bagram and everything. Because we flew on like an Atlas Airjet or something to Qatar. And then when you were in Qatar, we got on like a C-17. And when you're going to land, in case they shoot RPGs at you, whatever, they have to do this fancy freaking loop-de-loop. So everyone just gets scared out of their mind right before they land. Especially if you don't expect it. Like, fortunately, in our shop, someone had already gone before. So he was like, hey, just be ready. Like, when they're about to land, they're going to do some freaking crazy maneuvers. Just expect it. But other guys, like, were just caught off guard, like, freaking shaken out of their mind. It's like,
That's like when we went. So when we deployed, we went from I think Louisiana to freaking I want to say to Maine, over to Ireland.
Dang.
I think we refueled and then to Kuwait. And so when we went from Kuwait to Iraq, we got in probably a C-130 or C-90 somewhere in there.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, "All right, we're going to Iraq," and it's like the nose points up, and it's just like like full force. There's people throwing up, and we're like, "Does he have to do that? Like, it's Kuwait."
Yeah,
It's Kuwait. Like, we're not.
We're good guys. Come on.
Like, leaving Iraq, coming back, R&R, and post deployment, I kind of get it.
Yeah.
But leaving Kuwait, like, that's basically a peacekeeping mission at this point.
Yeah.
And my pilot buddy went over there and called it a deployment. And I was like, "All right, did you leave base?" "Yeah, we'd go out to the bar every night." "All right."
Oh, okay.
No deployment.
Yeah. Did you get hazard pay?
But I think he did. I'm pretty sure one of the reasons he called it that it was because of that, and I think they got a combat patch as well.
Oh man, we didn't get hazard pay for Kuwait Air Force anyway.
Well, yeah, but how long were you there?
I didn't go to Kuwait.
Oh, okay.
But like we were actually
so
slotted.
The Air Force in general.
We were slotted to go to Kuwait, and then they switched the game up on us and said, "Never mind Afghanistan."
Surprise!
I was like, we heard it through a rumor too. That was a trippy thing, because at first they were like, "Oh yeah, we're sending you to Kuwait," and then all of a sudden that morphed into, "We're sending you to Afghanistan," and they're like, "But at least you'll get combat pay," and I'm like, "Yeah, that just means we're getting shot at too." Like.
You guys know money doesn't really make up for that whole thing where you got to duck.
But the funny thing though is like the first month you get there, you're only there like for a couple days of the month, and then same for the last month. But you hope that you get mortared in those first and last month, because if you get an IDF during that period, you can claim that as combat pay. But if you don't, then you can't. Everything else you automatically get combat pay for. But we were all like, that first month we were hoping for it. We did get shot at, so we did get that extra combat pay. We didn't get it at the end of the month though. But I was like, man, never thought I'd be asking for that. But I mean, like, 250 is 250, man.
Yeah. That's one of the good things I told you about doing a 15-month deployment. They didn't rewrite the regulation. So if you were in a deployed environment and you were there for every month you were there past 12 months, you got an extra $1,000. So we got an extra $3,000 for our deployment.
Dang,
so
nice.
I was like, all right, that's okay.
That's a good deal. At least get a nice vacation on your way back.
Got out alive.
Yeah.
That was a plus.
Always.
Yeah. So we got to enjoy the extra $3,000.
Yeah. Wasn't an inheritance for someone.
Yeah, definitely. So I know you talk, Cayce, a lot about like transition and stuff like that. I'm curious. I don't know if you can really talk about what you do now, because I know about the one thing you do, but and then kind of what that looked like, especially because it sounds like working with the on the airplane engines was like, oh, that's my thing, and then that all kind of took a shit on you.
Yeah. So I mean, military thing, got to adapt. Move on.
Right.
So that's one of my biggest pieces of advice as far as transition is don't get sold on one thing, because chances are that'll get shot down, and if that does, you don't want to be stuck wishing you were there. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, you can hopefully everything goes as planned, but if not, just be fully prepared to take whatever options are presented to you, be it Dish Network or Applebee's, and then move on. And then move on from there. But so I actually a couple months after working for Dish, I was like, all right, I got to get out of here. And I have a criminal justice bachelor's, so I was like, I'll put that to work maybe. So I got a job working for Disability Rights North Carolina, who covers the entire country, but we're specifically North Carolina. but I'm basically a rep payee investigator. So if someone has disabilities and they don't have the ability to spend that money for themselves, so their government benefits, Social Security, SSI, then someone can be their representative payee and spend that money on their behalf. Now, there's situations where people will abuse that and they won't take care of the person and they'll just pocket that money or they'll neglect them, not care for them. You get that in like care facilities. So what we do is go in and make sure that they're well provided for. We reach out to guardians, family members to make sure like there's no complaints about the payee, make sure all their bills are paid, that they don't have any signs of like abuse, anything. And I tried to sort of shift us in a veteran direction as well, because we cover all people with disabilities. But I mean, obviously, veterans with disabilities are more where my heart is at. So like being able to work with veteran communities and stuff to get our name out there and everything, and being able to go into the state-run facilities in North Carolina to, just check in on the veterans, make sure that they're well provided for. The one that I did go to was, it was a nice facility. And really just talk to people because, it's tough now with COVID because you're not even able to really do that. It's not safe. But prior to that, a lot of people don't have someone to talk to, and giving them that avenue, that outlet to just, talk human to human for a little while is really valuable to people. And I mean, anyone can do that. Like anyone can go to a facility, talk to veterans, get a ton of history because you've got there's guys that served in World War II still alive. You've got Vietnam veterans that are there. And obviously you don't even have to talk about the war, just talk about yourself. And they'll happily listen.
Yeah.
But just making sure people are taken care of and everyone's doing what they should to provide, and linking them with community resources if there's something they need, like if they need a speech assistive device because they have trouble communicating, like putting them in the right direction. And with veterans, there's so many more avenues to a traditional person with disabilities, especially if that injury is like combat related, that once again, if you don't know about, then you won't know how to get it. So like there's literally just free money out there for veterans that have disabilities. But if you don't know about that, then how are you going to get it? And that's like through government programs as well as nonprofits.
Because of your job, do you personally know about a lot of those programs and stuff?
Yeah, I put together a PowerPoint with a lot of different various veteran resources. I can send it your way if you want.
Yeah.
But I did that, and then the North Carolina actually it's called the Governor's Working Group, but it's essentially all of these different organizations that come together and work to, kind of collaborate and help veterans across North Carolina. It covers everything from jobs to healthcare to like VFWs and American Legion units coming together, and they meet monthly, and they're on Facebook and stuff. You can watch their past meetings and all that.
Nice.
But it's just a group of people collectively working together to help veterans. And they have a website with all the resources and stuff like that too. And I'll say it doesn't go into super detail as far as like the smaller nonprofits and stuff. Yeah. But you can get those added if you reach out to them, and they'll add you to the book. So anyone you come across that is like trying to help out veterans, feel free to look up the Governor's Working Group and let them know and see if you can collaborate.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. Like I said before, we got that resources page on the website.
Yeah.
And so obviously the ultimate goal is I think it's just, the information that exists that people don't know about and connecting them to it. So I think it's awesome that you know a lot about that stuff and you're able to help so many people.
Yeah, I mean that's really the goal, is just bring that knowledge to people and hope that they can get it moving. I mean, some people need assistance with it, like caseworkers and stuff, if they're not able, because sometimes there is a lot of red tape, especially if you need something expensive like house modifications or power chairs, stuff
Oh
like
yeah.
that. Like power chairs can be tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
But again, there's organizations that provide those, and especially if you're combat disabled, you can usually find an organization to get it for free, or there's organizations that will give you a grant or something to try to fund it. Like another great one is the Gary Sinise Foundation.
Mm.
They're a funding group essentially, but they're really helpful as far as like no job too small. And I know a couple organizations that say they go to them if like they have their back to the wall and they're trying to get funding for something, and it could be a veteran that needs a ramp fixed in front of their home because theirs is dry rotted or something. Also, Purple Heart Homes, I've worked with them. They're a great organization, and again, no job too small, and have like caseworkers to repair homes of veterans who have disabilities and they're not able to, do the upkeep, something like that. Or North Carolina, we get a lot of flooding damage, hurricane damage, stuff like that. So you've got these houses that just get decimated, and then you have veterans that are on their like VA check, so they only have a fixed income, Social Security, stuff like that. So expecting them to be able to fix their own house can be daunting at times. On top of having a family that might live with them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really just getting that knowledge to them to make sure that they can get back on their feet proverbially.
That's crazy, man. That's awesome, though. It sounds like, I mean, you've already named a handful that I've never heard about. Gary Sinise is like one of my heroes.
Yeah,
I just love that guy.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like he goes and does Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump, and then the rest of his life is just all about veterans.
That's my thing.
It's like I found my calling.
Yeah.
Good. It's been a good run. Of course, I mean he had other acting roles. He was in, what was that crime show?
Oh yeah, NC. Was it NCIS?
No,
I can't remember.
I don't think it was NCIS. Well, now we're just embarrassing ourselves. But,
oh god!
But he recently
He's
put
great
out.
though, I promise.
Yeah, he put out a new book. Something, I feel like the premise of it was like gratitude or something, and it was you could order a signed copy, and I was like, man, I want it. Like I really wanted to get it, but I'm not. Like there's a bookshelf right here. These are all the books that I come across in my business. Then I'm like, this is valuable in one way or another. I'm going to keep it.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't do hard copy books. I have an Audible subscription. So I've read so many books. Like the Marshmallow Test is one I've read recently. I really enjoy. It teaches a lot about perseverance, patience, especially in the microwave society that we live in. I want it now. You know? It's interesting because of the study. If you've never heard of the Marshmallow Test, it's done on kids, but I will listen to it on Audible before I'll read a hard copy. So it's like, I really want that book by Gary Sinise with like the signed copy, but I think what would be much more exciting to me personally is meeting him in person.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm gonna save the money buying the book. You know, maybe if I meet him in person, I'll give him a $20 bill and be like, put that to work. You know,
yeah.
And
he would.
Yeah, well, and I'm glad you brought that up because if you compare the Gary Sinise Foundation to a lot of others, like they've got top level boards.
Yeah.
With making like millions of dollars a year. And if you look at his net worth in comparison to other people, it's not as outrageous. So that tells me the bulk of the money that goes into his organization is to help veterans.
Yep. And that's how you get the no job too small people, because they're not putting people through this giant paperwork process and freaking random legislation things because they don't have all that red tape, because it's not about the money. I mean, the reason they do all of the paperwork and stuff like that is ultimately to try to deter people at some point from applying for these benefits, which I'm like, if someone is hurting for a house and they need a home, why are you going to give them extra stressor of doing all of this paperwork if you can just assist them with it, or you can like have case managers help with that stuff? I mean, because for me, how much money you give is equally comparable to how easily you give it out. I'm like, if I say I have $100 bill, but you have to fight me for it, that's not the same as me just giving you $100 bill. And I mean, a lot of those giant big box organizations really fall prey to that.
Yeah. I think one I'll bring up is a very small one. I need to follow up with him. I did a live stream for him a year or two ago. It's a Chosen Foundation. And so they put on events for fallen soldiers' families. And we did one up here in Butner. They worked with them, and everybody flew in. It was awesome, dude. Like,
nice.
A couple of guys came from Florida. Another guy came from like California. One guy was like a veteran musician from Nashville. And so we're all meeting in this one place, and putting on this huge event. One guy made sneakers for the kid of the fallen soldier. It was all about them. And I mean, I could be mistaken, but I don't think they had to do any paperwork to get there. And then everybody was donating everything, or donating their time. Like, I went up and I did the live stream. And so, of course, that's like a tax write-off from a for-profit business standpoint. You offer your services. But it was awesome, and I met a ton of other veterans, and then, they had stand-up comics. Of course, they had the live music. They had a couple other speakers and stuff like that. But I think that's great that the wife of the fallen soldier and her kid didn't have to deal with that extra weight. Of course, it's more of a fun thing, so I don't know that in the grand scheme of things, if it would be like an application process per se. But I mean, the kid had fun, got a new pair of shoes, got all sorts of other fun little freebies and stuff from a creative standpoint. And I think everybody had a good time. Plus, they were all the donations accepted that night into Chosen Foundation. If it was cash, was immediately recorded and handed to the family. And then if it was some sort of electronic donation, then they were cut a check.
Awesome.
I think it was inside of that week, so it was fantastic because they got taken care of. Like I said, the kid had a good time, and they didn't have all that red tape that they had to jump through. Yeah,
it definitely can be a necessary evil because you don't want people to take advantage of different things, but you really reach that breaking point at a certain period.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what I've really seen is there's definitely people that want to help. There's people that are willing to donate time, businesses that are willing to take a little less money for a product and donate it to an organization to help veterans or help people with disabilities. And it's really just putting two and two together.
Yeah.
And once again, it comes down to that applied knowledge concept. So, I mean, really, that's one of the most powerful things is knowing about it and putting it to work.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, I killed our live, but I want to thank you again because I could probably sit here and talk all day, but I know you're tired and running on coffee, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, I gotta pee.
Yeah.
This is the Veteran Talk Show. If you or someone you love is suffering as a victim of sexual harassment, sexual assault, needs help with addiction and recovery, or mental health and well-being, then please go to veterantalkshow.com/resources. This show is hosted, produced, and edited by Ryan Smeltz. Our co-host is Joe Ballack, and guest starring veterans.